We're continuing our treatise on the passions, and question 30 of Prima Secunda has to do with concupiscence. And if you're familiar with this word, you generally think of it as being an attraction for something that could lead to sin, some kind of attraction to a sensitive appetite, like this lady, wanting the pizza there. And so what exactly is concupiscence? We learned about the concupiscible passions, which were love and hatred, desire and aversion, and joy and sadness, as opposed to the irascible passions. And so, again, let's dig into this. There's 4 articles in this question on concupiscence. And the first one, Article 1, whether concupiscence is in the sensitive appetite. So, of course, a sensitive appetite would be a desire that's based more in our lower part of our soul, not in our will. The will would not have to do with the sensitive appetite. The sensitive appetite would be like you see these French fries and you have a natural desire for them based on basically the same thing as your dog or any animal that desire these French fries would have. This is the sensitive part of your soul, and it doesn't have to do with your intellect or your will. So St. Thomas Aquinas says, as the philosopher says, concupiscence is a craving for that which is pleasant. Okay, like these French fries. Now, pleasure is twofold. One is in the intelligible good, which is the good of reason. The other is in the good perceptible to the senses. The former pleasure seems to belong to soul alone, whereas the latter belongs to both soul and body. All right, so remember that Thomas is very insistent that the intellect and the will are operations outside of any kind of corporeal organ. All right, so they're not attached to the body per se, because when the body dies, the intellect and the will, the separated soul, continues to have those. But those things which are dependent upon the body, like the sensitive appetites, are soul and body. That's what he's saying here. Because the sense is a power seated in a bodily organ, wherefore sensible good is the good of the whole composite, okay, body and soul together. Now, concupiscence seems to be the craving for this latter pleasure, since it belongs to the united soul and body, as is implied by the Latin word concupiscentia. Therefore, properly speaking, concupiscence is in the sensitive appetite and in the concupiscible faculty, which takes its name from it. All right, so I think hopefully that makes sense. Article 2, whether concupiscence is a specific passion. And again, remember, the concupiscible passions were a group of 6 that I just listed a moment ago. So he says, the good which gives pleasure to the senses is the common object of the concupiscible faculty. Hence, the various concupiscible passions are distinguished according to the difference of that good. Or he says, now the nature of the motive power of the end or of the good differs according as it is really present or absent. And do you remember when we talked about love and hatred, desire and aversion, joy and sadness? He talked about how joy and sadness is when you're resting in something. Desire and aversion is when it's not present, but you can't desire something that you already have, but you also can't be joyful about something that you don't have. So these are difference in that regard, whether they're present or they're absent. Love and hatred are the initial it's kind of hard to describe the difference between love and desire, because they seem to be so related to each other. Okay, so because according as it is present, it causes the faculty to find rest in it, like joy. Whereas according as it is absent, it causes the faculty to be moved towards it, like desire. Wherefore the object of sensible pleasure causes love, insomuch as, so to speak, it attunes and conforms the appetite to itself. It causes concupiscence inasmuch as, when absent, it draws the faculty to itself, and it causes pleasure inasmuch as, when present, it makes the faculty to find rest in itself. Accordingly, concupiscence is a passion differing in species from both love and pleasure, but concupiscence of this or that pleasurable object differs in number. Okay, so obviously this has to do with whether the pleasurable good is present or if it's something you're desiring, and it has to do with all these different concupiscible passions in that regard. It was a little bit difficult to understand that, but hopefully we've got enough of it, right? Whether some concupiscences are natural and some are not natural. Now, I find this really interesting. He says, concupiscence is the craving for pleasurable good. Okay, he's repeating himself. Now, a thing is pleasurable in two ways. First, because it is suitable to the nature of the animal. For example, food, drink, and the like. And concupiscence of such pleasurable things is said to be natural. Now, he's going to go on and say that this is something that we share with the brute animals, okay, like those French fries. Okay, that's a natural concupiscence. Okay, secondly, a thing is pleasurable because it is apprehended as suitable to the animal. Okay, it's apprehended. Okay, now this is going to have to do with reason. Reason apprehends, right? As when one apprehends something as good and suitable, and consequently takes pleasure in it, and concupiscence of such pleasurable things is said to be not natural and is more wont to be called cupidity. Now, he's not saying here that it's unnatural, like some pleasures are unnatural, but he's saying it's something that's apprehended as pleasurable, which would involve the reason, as I mentioned, but not just the sensitive appetite, like the desire for food or drink or something like that. Accordingly, concupiscences of the first kind, or natural concupiscences, are common to men and other animals, because to both is there something suitable and pleasurable according to nature. And in these all men agree, wherefore the philosopher calls them common and necessary. All right, so again, they're common and necessary. The things that we have to have, like drink and food and sleep, right? I would imagine sexual appetites would fall under this category as well. But concupiscences of the second kind are proper to men, to whom it is proper to devise something as good and suitable beyond that which nature requires. All right, so now it's like a level higher. It's not just this base instinctual desire for something of the senses. Now it's a little bit higher level of a desire, something that we're able to kind of concoct in our mind as something that we find desirable. Hence, the philosopher says that the former concupiscences are irrational, but the latter are rational. And again, it doesn't mean they're bad. It just means that they're common to the irrational creatures. And because different men reason differently, therefore the latter are also called peculiar and acquired, in addition to those that are natural. Okay, very interesting. I find that fascinating. Finally, whether concupiscence is infinite. All right. Concupiscence is twofold. One is natural, the other is not natural, as we just explained. Natural concupiscence cannot be actually infinite because it is of that which nature requires, and nature ever tends to something finite and fixed. Hence, man can never desire infinite meat or infinite drink. But just as in nature there is potential successive infinity, so can this kind of concupiscence be infinite successively, so that, for instance, after getting food, a man may desire food yet again, and so of anything else that nature requires, because these bodily goods, when obtained, do not last forever, but fail. Hence our Lord said to the woman of Samaria, whosoever drink of this water shall thirst again. So it seems like in one sense it's finite, and the other way it's infinite, because once we eat, we're going to get hungry again, and it just kind of goes on and on and on again. But non-natural concupiscence is altogether infinite, because, as stated above, it follows from reason, and it belongs to the reason to proceed to infinity. Hence, he that desires riches may desire to be rich, not up to a certain limit, but to be simply as rich as possible. Okay, I don't quite understand the difference, because, you can desire food, on and on and on and on again, and you can desire riches on again. But anyways, another reason may be assigned, according to the philosopher, why a certain concupiscence is finite and another infinite. Because concupiscence of the end is always infinite, since the end is desired for its own sake, that is health, and thus greater health is more desired, and so on to infinity, just as if a white thing of itself dilates the sight, that which is more white dilates yet more. Okay, so he's getting into the weeds here. On the other hand, concupiscence of the means is not infinite, because the concupiscence of the means is a suitable proportion to the end. Consequently, those who place their end in riches have an infinite concupiscence of riches, whereas those who desire riches on account of the necessities of life desire a finite measure of riches sufficient for the necessities of life. As the philosopher says, the same applies to the concupiscence and of any other things. Okay, so infinite, finite concupiscence, a little hard to understand. Hopefully that made some sense to you. But again, this first time through the Summa, we're just reading these questions, these articles, trying to make sense of it, get the overall flow of the Summa without getting bogged down every single time something confuses us a little bit. So those are the 4 articles on question 30 of Prima Secunda on concupiscence. I hope they made sense, and hope to see you again tomorrow. God bless you.